So here is where you have fundamentally misunderstood the Old Testament. You know, in the Old Testament, there is a princely order, princes, kings and princes. There is a priestly order. There are two different orders apart from prophetic order. Three separate orders of leadership apart from the elders. The Levitical priests or the Aaronic priests have nothing to do with the princely order. And therefore you are fundamentally mistaken. Hebrews chapter 7, I see references to the Old Testament priests and Jesus, who is in the New Testament. I don't see any reference to some other people who are priests in the New Testament apart from Jesus as part of the Melchizedekian order. I don't see that there. So are you going first? So
you can go first. Sure. I think it's fair that you clearly define what your objection is, I think, because then I know exactly, if you like, you steel man your objection, so then that way I can't go off track that way, can I? Is that fair? So you go first, mate. 1, 2, 3, go.
Okay. So in relation to the special priestly order, which Roman Catholicism has, Eastern Orthodoxy has, Assyrian Church has, and all of these people have, like I've defined what priestly order is earlier, I see this as a huge scam, big time scam in broad daylight. There are plenty of offices described, positions of responsibility described in the New Testament, none of which would amount to being a priestly order. For instance, there are pastors, there are teachers, there are apostles. None of these would be actually priests in particular. Priestly order doesn't exist in any of the offices defined in the New Testament. On top of that, and therefore, when it comes to priestly order, Sam will need to provide evidence for this. On top of that, what I can also say is the book of Hebrews in chapters 7, 8 and 9, it goes on to explicitly reject the idea of any office which succeeds the Aaronic priesthood in the New Testament. In the New Testament, you have the high priest called Jesus. That office exists, but there is no such thing called priests on planet Earth. Hebrews specifically goes on to say that because there is a Levitical priesthood here, Jesus wouldn't have been a priest here. Therefore, he went to the most holy in the heavenly realm and entered into the most holy place to be the high priest to present petitions before his Father. And as he does that, there is no special priestly order in this world. In other words, I see Roman Catholicism to be a scam.
Sure. And then,
sorry, I need to.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, thanks, Arul, and thanks for doing this actually, because believe it or not, I've wanted to for a while. So there you go. I'll obviously approach this purely because he referenced the Eastern Orthodox, the Assyrians, etc. I won't bother defending any of them. I'll just defend what the Roman Catholic Church believes in regards to the priesthood. And it all starts with the apostles, and in particular with Peter. Now, that's the important bit. So in Matthew 16, because I know Arul here will want some evidence for this. Obviously, the disciples are questioning Christ and ask who he is. And it is Peter who obviously is the one who says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Now, Jesus' response to him is very interesting. Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." Those keys is actually quite an important reference, because the keys, what is being referenced there is the keys of the president in the Old Testament, the president of the king, who was given the power to loose and bind, which is also part of the sacrificial system. Because part of the sacrificial system was the ability to bind the conscience of the laity. I know you don't like that term, Arul, but there we go. It's to bind the terms of the conscience of the laity to doctrine and to teaching. And also it will get into the sacrificial side of things, which I'll get into in my next 2 minutes. But the first thing to start is, where does the authority come from? It comes from the apostles themselves, which was given by Christ. I think it's your turn now, bud. Yeah, it's your turn now. Hang on. So 3, 2, 1, go.
What did I say? According to the New Testament, there is no special priestly order. Let me read Hebrews chapter 8. Hebrews chapter 8, verses 3 and 4. For every high, maybe it speaks about how Jesus, maybe verses 1 to 4. Now this is the main point of the things we are saying. We have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. There is a high priest in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord erected and not man. Troublemakers at it again.
Anyway, Arul, you good to go again? Just say
Yep.
when. Say when.
Sure.
Cool.
Yep. And particularly verse 4 of chapter 8 says, for if he were on earth, if Jesus were on earth, he would not be a priest. Since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the law. This is Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 4, an apostolic writing. It points out to a very clear scriptural principle. Jesus could not be on earth and be the Melchizedekian priest. He can't be. Because there are Melchizedekian priests here, if he wants to become a priest of a new order, it can't be here, it has to be up there. And so it says, for if he were on earth, he would not be a priest. Since there are priests who offer gifts according to the law. Very simply, long story short, there is no such thing called priests in the New Testament in this world. There is only one priest who is Jesus up there, apart from the general priesthood of the Christians here. But no specific priestly order.
Just say when.
Oh yes, sir.
Cheers. Okay, so I started the premise with Matthew 16 because it is important. I will come to Hebrews in my next 2 minutes. I will address it. But I think Arul also needs to address what the idea of the keys are. The keys that are given to Peter, they are also given to the rest of the apostles. No Catholic denies this. But the keys that are given to Peter are important. They are the keys of the Prime Minister in the Old Testament. Because that's why the apostles understood what they had just been handed, which is the teaching authority of Christ. If you like, it's like Christ is up in heaven as our high priest. But we also need people on earth to administer Christ's teachings, Christ's sacraments here on earth. That's the role of the apostles. And obviously as a Catholic, I believe they appointed successors, etc. And that's what we call apostolic succession. But what I guess I'm asking, Arul, is how do you find the significance of Christ doing two things in Matthew 16? Two things. One, he makes a promise that the gates of Hades shall never prevail against the church. That's number one. And secondly, he says, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So what is that authority that he's giving to the apostles? Because that authority is very significant. It does link into the being sacerdotal. I'm sorry if I just spat in your eye. It's significant because it does link into the sacerdotal side of things as well. Because you need to be given that authority to start off with. In my next 2 minutes, I will address your one in Hebrews. Okay, well, and also, I'll get the reference up properly later because I don't want to scroll through my phone. But obviously, we do have examples like in Timothy, where Paul is commanding Timothy to lay his hands upon others and to ordain them. So obviously, not everyone can be a preacher, not everyone can be a minister. These people are selected, they are ordained. And that is obviously something that is very important. Now, to be fair, that's not unique to Catholics. Obviously, Anglicans would believe that, etc.
So pay attention. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Can you get it out? Yes. I don't have an iPhone, so a bit foreign to me. Oh, there we go.
Pay attention carefully. The question is on whether there is a special priestly order in the New Testament. What has Sam done? Sam has spoken about apostles. Sam has spoken about teachers. Sam has spoken about people who can lay hands on others. None of these have nothing to do with a priestly order. In the Old Testament, you have teachers who taught in synagogues. You have the Pharisees, the lawyers, the teachers. They weren't the priests. I am particularly focused on the priests because according to Roman Catholicism, the claim is that these leaders in Roman Catholicism are priests. What would be the equivalent of the priests of the Roman Catholicism in the Bible? The Levitical priesthood. The Levitical priesthood did not have an exclusive authority in teaching. All sorts of other teachers who taught, rabbis and so on. So Sam has to now get to the details of whether there are priests in the New Testament. He spoke about this is where he got to the point of the keys. He agreed keys to bind, to loosen are with not just Peter, but also with other apostles. The question is, I'm not concerned about some keys to some locks about which we haven't decided anything. Are these priests? The reference he is using is an obscure reference. Is he suggesting if someone has some key, whatever key that is, he is a priest? Is that how you define a priest? A priest is someone who sacrifices. And according to the Hebrews chapter 8, verse 4, we are clear. If he were on earth, if Jesus was on earth, he would not be a priest. Can you see that? If he was on earth, he can't be a priest. Which means on earth, there is no such priest.
Cool. So, these keys are significant. They're not just any old keys. They're the keys that were given to the Prime Minister in the Old Testament. Why is that significant? Because it's the Prime Minister who acts on behalf of the King. What is Christ? Christ is the King, and therefore the apostles are his Prime Ministers. Now, what is the duty of the apostles? They are to preach the Word of God. They are to administer the sacraments. Whether Arul would say that something like the Lord's Supper or the Eucharist is a sacrament is by the by. You know, it's we as the Roman Catholics and also many of the Christian churches, including a lot of Protestant churches, acknowledge things like the Lord's Supper, like baptism, as sacraments, and they are administered by priests and ministers. They are not administered by Joe Blogs on the street. That is the important bit. So the part that the keys is important. So you have to look at the significance of them. Anyway, now to go to the apostles themselves, if you like, more exercising this priesthood somewhat. In Acts 1, when they are discussing about replacing Judas, to take the place in this ministry and apostleship from which Judas turned aside to go into his own place. And they cast their lots for them and fell on Matthias, and as they enrolled him with the 11 apostles. So in other words, they filled the office of Judas. So their number was back up to 12. They didn't have to fill up this office, but they did because the office is open. That's a form of apostolic succession, bringing the next generation in. How long have I got? 20 seconds. And so, yes, the point is, Arul, is, yes, a priest sacrifices, but also you've got to consider where does the authority come from. That's really key as well, and ironically. And so you have to acknowledge that these keys that were given to Peter and that were given to the other apostles as well, that is where it all stems from. And just as a last parting comment, it is not the Levitical priesthood, it is the priesthood of Melchizedek that counts.
That's the one.
Sorry, can I ask?
Sorry, bro.
No problem.
I was getting excited, so.
Yeah, no problem.
Go.
Yeah. You see, Sam went through all sorts of things. The one thing he didn't go through was to establish how there is a priestly order in the new covenant. That he did not do. Note carefully, he spoke about prime minister. Although I disagree with that particular detail he brought up, it's still a prime minister, not a priest.
It's an analogy.
He went through the details of apostles. I completely understand there are apostles. Even though I disagree on the idea of apostolic succession, I completely understand there are apostles. But that has nothing to do with priests. He went through the idea of how Judas was replaced. Look, even if I disagree, that is irrelevant. I am trying to find out if there are equivalents of Levitical priests in the New Testament, because who I see the funny clothed people in the Roman Catholic order, I see them to be proper daylight robbers. And so I'm trying to find out if their role is legitimate. And that is where I'd like at least one reference to how there is a New Testament special priestly order in the New Testament. Let me read the verse carefully again. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 4. It says about Jesus, even Jesus, who is the actual Melchizedekian priest. It says, if he were on earth, he would not be a priest. Why? Since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the law. In other words, according to the Bible, the distinction is clear. On earth, you only have Levitical priesthood of the law, the Torah. The kingdom of heaven is not of this world. It transcends and it begins there. And in this, Jesus is the high priest there. No priest here.
Should I? Yeah. Cool. So, I actually want him to stop with the comparisons with the Levitical priesthood. That's completely irrelevant, and here's why. Because the priesthood of the New Testament is the priesthood of Melchizedek. As it says in Hebrews 7, this becomes even more evident that when another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become a priest, not according to a legal requirement concerning bodily descent, but by the power of indestructible life. So the priesthood of the New Testament is Melchizedek. Because what did Melchizedek offer? Bread and wine. That is why it is Melchizedek, not the Levitical priesthood. The Levitical priesthood offered blood sacrifices. The Levitical priesthood offers the offering of bread and wine. So that's the key part you have to stick to. I don't have to show that it's the Levitical priesthood, just the priesthood of Melchizedek, because what we are offering up at Mass every Sunday as Catholics and also as Orthodox and even as lots of Protestants, we are offering up bread and wine to the Father in the name of Jesus Christ. That is what we are doing. We are not slaughtering goats, we are not slaughtering sheep, and so that is the premise on which we have to start. Anyway, so now also, in regards to this idea more of apostolic succession, it's in 2 Timothy, where Timothy is instructed to lay his hands upon people that he deems worthy to succeed him. Now, why is that important? Because he's also told that these men should be worthy men. They can't be Joe Blogs off the street. They can't be anyone just in the church. They have to be people deemed fit of the office. They have to be people perfect for the office. And because what does a priest have to do? A priest has to offer the sacrifice of the Mass. He has to hear confessions. He has to marry people. He has to give last rites. He has a lot of things, basically. But the point is this. Without the succession, you don't have the priesthood. And it goes back to the apostles. Perfect? Say when.
Yep.
Go.
Sam, maybe I'll speak to you directly right now.
Yeah, of course.
Because what you have forgotten to do is this.
Can I just do this? Sorry.
Say again.
Sorry, I'll pause your time. You have 10 seconds. I have 10 seconds.
No, maybe I'll start again. Yeah?
Yeah, start again.
Okay.
Just to be fair. Just to be fair.
Sure.
3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah. Are there apostles in the New Testament? There are. Are there other offices in the New Testament? There are. Teachers, deacons, all sorts of offices exist in the New Testament. Is there some level of succession in some of these offices? There could be, that I'm not even discussing right now. Is Jesus a Melchizedekian priest? Yes, he is. I am now particularly focused on whether, apart from Jesus, there are other priests in the New Testament. And there, you pointed out to Hebrews chapter 7, where you said Jesus is a priest in the order of Melchizedek. But what you forgot to understand is that it is only Jesus who is the priest of the order of Melchizedek, the one without a beginning, without an end. No one else. Not the funny fellow sitting in Rome, Vatican, or anywhere else. Only Jesus. And it goes on to say that this priest represents a supreme, a better covenant to an extent. He cannot continue offering the same stuff. He doesn't have to. Let me read to you. So Hebrews chapter 7, verses 26 and 27. For such a high priest was fitting for us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and has become higher than heavens, who does not need daily as those high priests to offer up sacrifices. According to this priestly order, there is no daily offerings. There is not even a repeat of offerings. To offer up sacrifices, first for his own sins and then for the people's. For this he did once. The Melchizedekian priesthood of the New Testament offers once. And he did that 2,000 years ago. Any fellow who's claiming he's making an offering right now is a scammer. Wake up. So how many more rounds did you want to go? Couple more?
Couple more?
Sure.
Because also I got someone to think of.
Yeah.
I got a... go back.
Sorry.
So should we make this, say, I don't know, should we do one more, as in one more each of 2 minutes, and then do one of 3, which is like our closing statements? Yeah. Do you want to do that?
Sure.
Cool. That sounds good. That sounds good to me. So this will be my last 2 minutes. So
your last 2, and did you want to do one more round of 2 or not?
Oh no, one more round of 2. Yeah, sorry, mate.
So
sorry, mate.
you do one round of 2, and then we'll do one more round of 2. Yeah.
Yep. Sounds
because
good.
I started.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Should I start?
Yeah, go. Right. So in Hebrews 7, he is right that it speaks mainly of Christ as the high priest of Melchizedek. He's not wrong about that. However, it does speak of other people too. So in verse 20, for example, it says, "And it was not without any oath, and those who formerly became priests took their office without an oath, but this one who addressed with an oath. The Lord has sworn that he will not change his mind. Thou art a priest forever. This makes Jesus surely a better covenant. The former priests were mainly in number because they were prevented by death and from counting an office, but he holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever." There is reference here to priests themselves, not just Jesus himself. Jesus is the ultimate high priest. And actually in Catholic theology, we call it in persona Christi. And that means in the person of Christ. So when the priest is saying the words, hoc est eum corpus meum, this is my body, it is not the priest saying those words. It is Christ saying those words because Christ is the ultimate high priest. The priest does not get sacerdotal powers simply based on the fact he was ordained. He gets those sacramental powers because the ultimate high priest is Jesus. So like I say, to repeat one more time, when the priest says the words, "This is my body," the priest is not saying those words. Christ is saying those words through the priest, in persona Christi. It's a really important part of Catholic theology. We do not believe that the priest has special powers in himself. He only contains those powers because of Jesus. You can go. That was a good point to end on, so you can have it, Arul. So yeah, that was one more round of 2 minutes, and then we do conclusion. Yeah, Sam. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Sure.
Go.
Sam did many things, but the one thing which he failed to do is the only thing which he was supposed to do, which is the debate topic. Are there special priests? Sam said in Hebrews chapter 7, apart from Melchizedek, there are other priests referred to. Yes, there are, but they are referring to the Old Testament priests. Now, I'm assuming Sam thinks that they are the priests that he has, which are the Old Testament priests. So I can completely understand if he is thinking Roman Catholicism is some sort of an Old Testament order, well, maybe he is terribly confused in a different way. But in the New Testament, apart from Jesus, there is no other priest. The one thing he failed to do right through our conversation is to provide evidence for a special priestly order in the New Testament. What did he do? He spoke about apostles. I agree with the apostles, office of apostles. He spoke about how Judas was replaced. No problem at all. He spoke about other offices like deacons and so on. No problem. He spoke about some funny keys. I don't know what he spoke about. Prime Minister, all sorts of things. What he failed to speak about is whether, number one, there is an office who can offer sacrifices in the New Testament beyond what Jesus did on the cross. About that, in Hebrews chapter 7 said, Jesus offered once, There is no further sacrifice. There is no need for any more sacrifice. I mentioned that. And I also read to you Hebrews chapter 8, verse 4. And I said, because Jesus has come for the kingdom of heaven, the priest for the kingdom of heaven is he himself alone. And he is in heaven, where there is a most holy place. Whoever claims to be a priest here, including the Pope, is a scammer. Don't fall for this lie. 3 minutes conclusion.
3 minutes, yeah?
Conclusion.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry.
no, it's 2 minutes. No, it's 2 more. Sorry, it's one more. 2 minutes, isn't it?
Yes, just sorry, apologies. Yeah.
This has been good fun, by the way.
You're last. Absolutely. Should I start?
Yeah, go for it. Okay, so he's saying that I have to show sacrifices in regards to the Old Testament. He keeps drawing back to the Old Testament. This is the New Covenant. So, what is being offered in the New Covenant? Bread and wine. This is the sacrifice. And in particular, not just the bread and wine. What is being offered? It is Christ himself being offered to the Father in an unbloody manner. That is exactly what it is. Now, Arul will say, well, where do you get that from? Something like 1 Corinthians 10. This cup of blessing which we bless, it is not a participation in the blood of Christ. The bread which we break, it is not a participation in the body of Christ. Because there is one bread of which many are one body, and there is one partake of one body. Consider the people of Israel, that not those who eat the sacrifices are partners in the altar. Who do not imply then the food offered is idols or anything, or the idols of anything. No, I imply that when pagans sacrifice, they offer demons and not to God. I do not want you to be the partners of demons. You cannot drink of the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake in the table of the Lord and the table of demons. Now, why is that important?
Why?
Because Christ's presence is really there. In the bread and the wine, Christ's presence is there. Now, I don't have to be a Catholic to believe this. The Lutherans believe this. The Reformed believe this. The Orthodox believe this. The Orientals believe this. The Assyrians believe this. We might have all different conclusions on how we get there, but we all believe that Christ is genuinely present in the elements and that it is offered up as a sacrifice in some description. Now, Catholics would say specifically that it's a perpetual sacrifice offered up to the Father. Protestants would disagree on that, but they would still say that it is offered up as a sacrifice in some sense.
Done?
Yep. So it's your 3 minutes to
Conclude. Yeah?
conclude, yeah, now, mate.
Okay, so we're now doing a 3 minutes conclusion.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
3
each.
minutes conclusion.
He's going to go first.
I'm going to, yeah.
Why not Q&A?
We can, after this, maybe we can ask Q&A.
If you want
Now,
to.
before conclusion.
No, cross-examination. But
you
one,
wanna do you wanna do a
we'll do
cross?
conclusion first. Oh, no, cross-examination, yeah? Cross-examination, maybe 5 minutes?
5 minutes each?
I don't know,
Sounds
5
good to
minutes
me.
each? Okay, 3 minutes each, and then we'll do 2 rounds, maybe 3 rounds or something, yeah? What do you think?
1 round, I'd say. I just got this one to think about. That's
Okay,
all.
okay, sure.
That's all.
Sure.
One-
So
one
sorry
round.
about that. We have stolen Sam. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. So 3 minutes.
And then we'll do conclusions after that, though. Because
Sure,
I think
sure.
we do deserve a conclusion each. That's only fair. That's only fair.
Okay, cool.
So do you want to cross-examine me first, or how do you want to play this? How do you want to play this?
Because I spoke first, I presented my points first, you cross-examine me
So
first.
you want me to cross-examine you first?
Yeah.
Okay. You hold that then.
Yep.
3 minutes each.
Yeah. So I'll cross-examine Arul first, then you'll cross-examine me.
Should we start?
Okay, cool. So, Arul, well, let's start with the keys. You keep sort of fobbing them off. Why are you fobbing off the keys? Because in the Old Testament, it's clearly stated in Isaiah that the keys are given to the prime minister of the kingdom. Now, the prime minister is the one below the king. So if you like, the imagery of this is you've got the apostles, who are the prime ministers, if you like. They're not literally the prime ministers, it's more like a typology. But they are the prime ministers because Christ is the king. So why do you keep fobbing that sort of thing off in terms of, because this is the moment when they are given this promise, because it is a promise, they'll be given the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Why are you fobbing this one off like it doesn't matter? Like, what is your interpretation of those keys?
Sure. So here is where you have fundamentally misunderstood the Old Testament. You know, in the Old Testament, there is a princely order, princes, kings and princes. There is a priestly order. There are 2 different orders apart from prophetic order. three separate orders of leadership apart from the elders. The king and the princess are not the priests.
But do you recognize, though, that it was the prime ministers who were given the power to loose and bind? Interestingly, not the king. Because it's the imagery of the king is overseeing, the king is in charge, but it's these prime ministers who actually
But the
enact
entire topic was not whether there are prime ministers. I'm not even commenting on the point you're making right now. I am merely citing or saying to you, priests is the topic at hand.
Okay. So
is there a priestly order? And when it comes to the priestly order, when it comes, you ask me why do I fob? Very simply because the Levitical priests or the Aaronic priests have nothing to do with the princely order, and therefore you are fundamentally mistaken.
Not quite, but anyway, let's go back because it's only 3 minutes. Let's go quickly to the manner of the sacrifice, because you've kept comparing the apostles and priests to Levitical priests, whereas I'm saying Melchizedek, because the offering is bread and wine. Okay, so why compare? Let's put it like this. Would you not say that the Eucharist, when offered, in some sense is a sacrifice, even in your worldview? You read 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Yes. How can you profane something that isn't there?
1 Corinthians chapter 11, Jesus goes on, and the Apostle
you mean
Paul.
St. Paul?
St. Paul goes on to say, in the night Jesus was betrayed, he took the bread and wine and whatever, and then he went on to say, please do this in remembrance of me. Now, here is where,
but how can you profane a symbol?
If you want us to discuss, about real presence or whatever, that will be a different topic.
Just to check, I'm not going over, am I?
No, that'll be a different topic. All that I'm saying, in relation to priests, you haven't presented a case, unfortunately, and that was the only topic of discussion today.
Right.
Timer.
Time for me to get grilled.
What is your best case for a reference to a priestly order in the New Testament?
You are a priest in the order of Melchizedek forever. So, because that's not just talking about Christ. That is talking about the priests as well.
So that's your best case. Now, help me understand. Where do you get the idea that is speaking about others apart from Jesus also?
Because interestingly, it talks about the priests, and it also goes into plural sometimes. Like, it's interesting. Hebrews 7 is rather interesting. It's in singular and sometimes in plural. So when it's in plural, it's making reference to other people other than Jesus.
We both understand Melchizedek is one person, and Melchizedek is this unique person with no beginning, no end. Very unique. And that is how he is compared. Now, we also understand in Psalm 110 how there is the Melchizedekian priest sitting at the right hand of God, and how they even swap sides and so on. My question to you is, there is no one else there apart from Jesus. Where do you get the weird idea that there is someone else apart from Jesus there?
Because of the reference in Hebrews of there being priests and them being in the order of Melchizedek. Because in the Old Testament, really the only pure references we get to priests are the tribe of Levi, not so much Melchizedek. Melchizedek is in Genesis, and then after that he's not really heard of after. So it's interesting.
So Melchizedek is a special priest. That is Jesus. In relation to, you said Hebrews chapter 7, I see references to the Old Testament priests and Jesus, who is in the New Testament. I don't see any reference to some other people who are priests in the New Testament apart from Jesus as part of the Melchizedekian order. I don't see that there. I don't know where you find that here.
It says, it's like, for example, in it's verse 18, isn't it? Yeah. For on the one hand, there is an annulling of the former. I don't like this wording. Come on, because of its weakness and unprofitability. Can you read it? Sorry, my dyslexia is kicking in.
No problem.
Dyslexia is kicking in.
For the law made nothing perfect. On the other hand, there is the bringing in of a better hope, through which we draw near to God. And inasmuch as he was not made priest without an oath, so they have become priests without an oath, but he with an oath by him who said to him, the Lord is sown and will. So I completely understand. Jesus was sown in. Where do you see anyone else? Is my question.
It's the reference to the other priests here, the priests without an oath.
It's comparing. In Hebrews, they are comparing Jesus with the Old Testament priests, and the entire point they are making is only Jesus here.
Right. So 3 minute. 3 minute closes.
Conclusion.
You go. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I go first.
So 3, 2,
Lovely.
1. Oh, you don't have to use all 3 minutes if you don't want to.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Maybe I'll start again.
It's all right. We're just saying you don't have
All
to.
right.
Go.
Dear friends, there have been plenty of issues because of Roman Catholicism. Even today, there are abominable practices because of Roman Catholicism. Queen of Heaven, idols, speaking to the dead, all sorts of abominable things in the times past. Slavery, there were edicts, bulls issued for, taking over slaves. There were bulls issued for taking over colonialism. All sorts of evil that have happened. And of course, we hear in Ireland how children have been destroyed. Pedophilia, big time sexual immorality in the Roman Catholic institution. And that is why what we are dealing with right now is a very important topic. I see the entire Roman Catholic order to be proper scammers, big time. One of the worst financial scams in world history, not just from Islam, but from Roman Catholicism. The properties they swindled all over the world, phenomenal. And what they do in terms of selecting some fellow, smoke and nonsense, utterly, remarkable, nothing to do with Jesus. And that is where I ask the very simple question. Is there a special priestly order in the church? Thankfully for us, we find in the New Testament there is no such special priestly order. Sam struggled big time. Remember, he spoke about prime minister, he spoke about apostles, he even spoke about Judas's replacement. What he failed to speak, he spoke about some fancy keys or what, no, I don't know which locks he was talking about. The one thing he failed to speak about is a special priestly order in the New Testament. That he failed to speak about. No evidence for that. And he was grasping at straws when he was referring to priests referred to in the book of Hebrews. My dear Roman Catholic friends, wake up before it is too late. Worship God, the triune alone. No hyperdulia of Mary. Don't sell your souls. Queen of Heaven worship cost precious souls in the Old Testament times also. Don't sell your souls. There are plenty of Jews who look at this and think, well, this can't be true, and they are right. Because Roman Catholicism is not consistent with the Hebrew scriptures. It is entirely right. And so, if you want to understand, Quran is inconsistent with the Old Testament, and therefore we reject the Quran. And New Testament, and therefore we reject the Quran. So is Roman Catholicism. A big time scam. Get away. It's a criminal mafia network. Stay away from it. Come to Jesus. Surrender your lives before the triune God. No hyperdulia, Queen of Mary business. Thank you very much.
Say when?
Yes, sir.
First, I just want to say cheers for Arul for letting me do this today, actually. So, thanks, bud. Cheers. Right. He said how, I've really struggled to find a case for the priesthood. I guess maybe that's because, in some sense, sticking to the New Testament completely, you won't find the fullness of the Catholic priesthood in there. But that is for a very specific reason. Matthew 16 quite clearly said how Jesus established a church upon the apostles, and we find this church in history. Saint Irenaeus, writing in the 200s, talks and says, if you cannot trace your church back to the apostles, you do not have a church. Saint Ignatius of Antioch says, wherever the bishop is, there is Christ. If you have no bishop, you have no church. And also you have people like Saint Athanasius saying, those who read the scriptures to their own visions have their own condemnation. Those who read the scriptures without the testament of the church are heretics. Now, we got to look at history as well. Christianity is not purely contained to the Bible. It's not purely there in the sense of all of our history I am part of the church that wrote the great creeds, that wrote the great confessions, that held the ecumenical councils, and all the theology that I know Arul believes in the Trinity, in the hypostatic union, in the two wills of Christ, the two energies of Christ. All that stuff is contained within the councils of the church. The stuff I know he believes, because he has to. And the point is this: when you look at the history of the church, there was a priesthood established from the very early days, from the days of Polycarp, from the days of Ignatius, from the days of Clement, and you have to question why. And it's because in the New Testament there is a church established upon the apostles by Jesus, and they are given sacrificial powers. It's obvious as well when you read something like 1 Corinthians, when they are offering up a sacrifice when they're offering up the sacrifice of bread and wine. And so all I would ask is, whether you are Catholic, whether you are Protestant, whether you are Orthodox, just remember one thing. We are all looking to strive and serve the Lord in our own different ways, like I even know that Arul is, something I'll never take away from him. And it's important for all of us to understand each other's positions. I just hope today, at least, he doesn't look at me as part of some mafia and actually part of some church.
That was my conclusion. I don't know what is changing my conclusion.
And so hopefully, I hope one day I can change his mind, God willing. Thanks, Arul. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sam. Lovely to see you. God's blessings. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good to see you again, by the way.
Very good to see you. Sam has been a friend. I've known him for a number of years now. Acquaintance. We disagree, and I'm going to still insist he didn't provide any evidence for the priestly order.
I still love him, though.
But we still love each other. God's blessings. Thank you very much, Sam. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see your friend, and hopefully we'll catch up more. So, dear friends, that's an important topic for everyone. Like I said earlier, the priestly order is a claim. Let me take a step back. For everyone who is watching, please note carefully, and maybe even for Bob who is somewhere here, I am dealing with life and death here, and that is the only reason I am debating this topic. I'm dealing with life and death. Why do I say I'm dealing with life and death? God triune of the Bible, requires worship only towards Him. Jews of the times past in the Old Testament messed up, and they paid a huge price. What did they do? They ended up worshipping a queen of heaven, as recorded in some of the prophets. Queen of heaven, Prophet Jeremiah. Abominable practices like speaking to the dead in the Old Testament times, which God had forbidden. There are only a few things for which there is capital punishment in the Torah, all of which are currently practiced in Roman Catholicism. It is a serious problem that we are dealing with. So if you are Roman Catholics who are watching, fans of Bob or otherwise, if you are Roman Catholics who are watching, I warn you, we are dealing with life and death right now. And you would know, I love Muslims, and I likewise also love Roman Catholics and people of Eastern Orthodoxy and so on. Because lives are at stake, even though JC is running away there, because lives are at stake, I am making this serious point at Speaker's Corner and elsewhere. My dear friends, it is important to make sure that we get to the right side of God, without which God does not say, hey, Muslims get away, everyone else comes in. That's not the requirement, my dear friends. There is a covenant called New Covenant. You don't follow the New Covenant, God unfortunately will say, look, you're not part of the New Covenant. And according to the New Covenant, in terms of worship, what was there in the Old Covenant still would apply. The same triune God without a queen of heaven still would apply. The same triune God without idols and icons still would apply. The same triune God without transcending into the realm of those who have passed away, the dead, still would apply. I invite all Roman Catholics, I invite all people of Eastern Orthodoxy and anyway everyone else, look at these people who are criminal gangs. They're funny priests. Don't follow them. Leave them. Pick up a copy of the Bible and read for yourselves. In the UK, as we deal with the existential crisis that is Islam, we can effectively deal with this with the power of God only if God is happy with us. Note carefully, my dear friends, the way we can debunk, demolish Islam in the UK is not through our power. Through our power, I'm telling you, we are in a place of no return. Look at how much Israel is suffering. We are in a place of no return. We need God to help us. And if God is supposed to help us, God needs to be happy with us. With abominations that we practice, He won't be happy. Return to Jesus. Take the Bible. Read for yourselves. Get your life together properly before God. God will then come in to help us. God will help the nation of Israel. My dear friends, Israel as a nation is the only nation that God has promised will survive until the end. God has given a covenant. And I am telling you, there is no such guarantee for the UK. But there is an opportunity. If we get our act together and become proper Christians, at least today, God is able to say, I will preserve you also as a nation until the end. And I hope and pray that that would happen to our nation. That's my responsibility to take charge of and to, advise people on until the very end. God is able to defend us. God is able to demolish everyone else. So come to Jesus, leave Roman Catholicism, leave Eastern Orthodoxy, leave all of these. Come to Jesus. Now JC is back. I say come to Jesus, leave Roman Catholicism, he's back. That's good. A good sign. JC has been a lovely friend for a very long time. So this is how we conduct ourselves. As people who appreciate the Bible, appreciate Jesus, we should be able to have respectful conversations, whilst we respect and value the human beings who have not come to kill us today, yet get to the bottom of our areas of disagreement. Now let's go on, deal with some Muslims right now. God's blessings. Thank you very much. Thank you. God's blessings. God's blessings. Thank you.